The moment I realized my paycheck had nothing to do with my work was the moment my boss told me to accept it or leave. "I need you to explain something," I said, keeping my voice steady as I turned my laptop toward him. "Why is that intern making 50% more than me?" My boss, Daniel Price, did not look at the screen. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and sighed the way people do when they want a conversation to end before it begins. "That's a decision from above," he said. "Accept it or leave." I felt the words hit harder than the number ever had. I had been with the company for years. I had trained teams, fixed operational failures, stayed late when others left early. I was not emotional. I was not careless. I was asking a reasonable question. "I'm not asking for a favor," I said. "I'm asking why my experience is worth less." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're comparing yourself to the wrong person. I'm comparing myself to my paycheck." Before he could answer, the door opened. The intern walked in without knocking, coffee in hand, relaxed, confident, like the room already belonged to him. He glanced at me, then at Daniel. "Is this about my salary?" he asked, almost amused. I didn't respond. Daniel didn't either. The intern smiled and shrugged. "My dad already approved it." I looked at Daniel. "His dad." Daniel exhaled slowly. "He means the vice president." The intern tilted his head. "I'm the vice president's son." "Okay." The room went quiet in a way that felt deliberate, as if the truth had been waiting for the right moment to speak. In that silence, something inside me settled. This was not a misunderstanding. It was not a mistake. It was not about budgets or performance or market rates. It was about who mattered here, and who was expected to accept less without complaint. My name is Layla Morgan, and in that office, I finally understood that my value was never part of the equation. The story you are about to hear is a fictional narrative created by the writing team at Her Revenge. While the characters and events are imagined, the experiences reflect real workplace dynamics faced by many professionals. This story is told to explore power, dignity, and the moment someone decides they will no longer stay silent. Daniel cleared his throat. "Layla," he said, softer now. "This isn't something we need to escalate." I closed my laptop and stood. "You're right," I said. "This already is." Before Philadelphia, I had learned how to keep my head down and my work flawless. 12 years in operations had taught me that competence did not always come with credit. I had trained managers who later signed my performance reviews. I had watched promotions pass me by with polite explanations about timing and fit. "Layla, you're invaluable where you are," a former director once told me. "Moving you would slow the team down." That was always the excuse. I stayed because stability mattered. I stayed because I was no longer in my 20s. And restarting carried consequences I could not ignore. When this role opened in Philadelphia, I told myself it was different. New leadership, clean slate, a company that talked about fairness without whispering it. During the interview, Daniel had smiled and said, "We value experience here. We don't play favorites." I believed him. On my first day, he introduced me around with a practiced confidence. "This is Layla Morgan, Senior Operations Analyst. She's been doing this longer than most of us." People nodded, a few smiled. One woman, Maya from Logistics, leaned over later and said quietly, "I'm glad they finally hired someone who knows what they're doing." I took that as a good sign. There were small things I noticed but dismissed. Meetings where decisions were already made before I spoke. Emails where my input was acknowledged but never followed. A young intern who sat in on discussions he did not seem qualified to attend. "He's here to learn," Daniel said once when I asked why the intern was present. "Leadership potential." I nodded. I had heard that phrase before. At lunch one day, Maya sighed and said, "You'll see how it works soon enough." "How what works?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just be careful what you ask for." I laughed it off. I told myself every company had quirks. I told myself I was lucky to be here. I told myself this job was my fresh start. By the time I left Daniel's office that morning, I realized how carefully I had been choosing what not to see. I found the file because Daniel asked me to review onboarding budgets for the quarter. "Just make sure everything lines up," he said, standing in my doorway. "We're tightening oversight." "Of course," I replied. That was my job. The document was simple enough. Names, roles, compensation bands. I scanned it the way I always did, looking for inconsistencies before they turned into problems. When I saw my name, I paused. Layla Morgan, Senior Operations Analyst. Annual salary spelled out in neat columns. It matched my offer letter exactly. I nodded to myself and kept going. Then I saw the intern. Same department, lower title, start date 2 weeks after mine. And a number that made my chest tighten. 50% more than what I was making. I stared at it, waiting for my brain to correct the mistake for me. That can't be right, I said out loud, even though no one was there. I scrolled back up, checked the column header. Annual base compensation. Not projected. Not conditional. Maybe it was a signing bonus folded in. Maybe a temporary stipend. Maybe a formatting error. I reopened the file. Same number. I pulled up the intern's profile. No advanced degree. No prior operations experience. His role description was a paragraph long. Mine was 3 pages. Maya walked past my desk and slowed when she saw my face. "You look like you just swallowed something sharp," she said quietly. "Can I ask you something?" I asked. She leaned in. "If this is about pay, don't. I just need to know if there's a reason an intern would be paid more than a senior analyst." Her expression didn't change, but her voice dropped. "Did you actually see it?" I nodded. Maya exhaled through her nose. "Then you already know the reason. That doesn't explain the number. It explains why no one talks about it." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The number did not move. It did not soften. It did not apologize. It just sat there, precise and deliberate, waiting for me to decide what to do with it. I didn't raise my voice when I went back to Daniel's office. I didn't bring the spreadsheet. I brought myself. "Can we talk about compensation?" I asked, standing in the doorway. He glanced at his screen, then at his watch. "Make it quick." "I reviewed the onboarding budget like you asked," I said. "There's a discrepancy I don't understand." Daniel leaned back. "Compensation isn't always linear." "I know," I said. "But this one isn't close." He smiled, thin and polite. "You're focusing on the wrong metric. I'm focusing on my role." I replied, "And my experience." "You're comparing yourself to an intern," he said, as if correcting a child. "I'm comparing responsibilities," I said, "and outcomes." He tapped his pen against the desk. "Layla, you've been doing this a long time. You should know how these things work." "I know how work works," I said. "I'm asking how pay works here." His smile faded. "Market conditions vary. My role hasn't," I said. "Neither has my performance." He sighed. "This isn't a conversation we normally have." "Maybe that's the problem," I said. There it was. The shift. His shoulders squared, his voice lowered. "At your stage," he said carefully, "stability matters more than pushing boundaries." I felt heat rise in my chest. "At my stage," I said, "fairness still matters." He stood. "You're making this uncomfortable. I'm making it accurate." Daniel walked around the desk and stopped too close. "Listen," he said, voice tight. "This decision came from above. It's not personal. It feels personal when it's my paycheck." He met my eyes. "Then you need to decide how much this matters to you." "I already have," I said. He opened the door. "Accept it," he said, "or leave." As I stepped into the hallway, I heard laughter behind me. The intern's voice, confident, unbothered. The choice Daniel thought he'd given me was already collapsing under its own weight. I had barely taken 2 steps down the hallway when Daniel called after me. "Layla? Come back." I turned. He was standing in his doorway again, jaw tight, the professional mask slipping just enough to show irritation underneath. "We're not done," he said. "I thought we were," I replied, walking back in. He closed the door behind me. "You're letting emotion cloud your judgment." "I'm letting facts guide it." Before he could respond, the door opened without a knock. The intern stepped in like he belonged there, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He glanced at me, then at Daniel, and smiled. "Am I interrupting?" he asked. Daniel's shoulders shifted. "Not much. Just enough for me to notice." "We're in the middle of something," Daniel said. The intern shrugged. I heard my name. I crossed my arms. We were discussing compensation. He raised an eyebrow. "Mine." Daniel cleared his throat. "This isn't appropriate." "It's fine," the intern said easily. "People always get curious." "Curious isn't the word," I said. He looked at me fully then, eyes flicking over me like I was part of the furniture. "Look, if this is about my salary, it's already been approved." "Approved by whom?" I asked. He smiled again, smaller this time. "My dad." Daniel's head snapped toward him. You don't need to say that, the intern laughed. Why not? He already signed off. Your dad, I said slowly, is the vice president. He nodded. That's right. The room felt different after that. Daniel straightened, hands clasping behind his back like he was suddenly aware of his posture. We don't discuss executive decisions at this level, Daniel said, but his voice lacked force. The intern took a sip of his coffee. Relax, it's not a secret. I watched Daniel say nothing. In that silence, I saw the structure clearly. Who spoke freely, who deflected, who stayed quiet. This isn't about performance, I said. It never was. The intern shrugged. It's just how things work. Daniel finally met my eyes. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain it. He just stood there, letting the truth do what it was designed to do. I didn't confront anyone right away. I listened, in the break room. Maya stood beside me pretending to stir sugar into her coffee. You shouldn't have pushed him, she said quietly. I asked a question. I replied. She didn't look at me. That's what I mean. Later that afternoon, I caught Eric from compliance as he was packing up. You ever notice how certain people never worry about raises, I asked? He hesitated, then gave a short laugh. Notice we joke about it. Who's we? Everyone who's been here longer than 5 years, he said. Everyone who doesn't have a last name that opens doors. At my desk, an email popped up from Nina in finance. Just 3 words, be careful asking. I walked over to her office. You sent me that for a reason, I said. She closed her laptop. 2 years ago, someone asked the same question you did. Who? A woman named Carla, Nina said. Senior analyst, smart, quiet. She asked why her numbers didn't match her title. What happened? They said they'd review it, Nina replied. 3 months later, she was gone. Position eliminated, no replacement. Did anyone fight it? Nina shook her head. People have mortgages, kids, parents. Silence is cheaper. By the end of the day, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The women who had trained teams but never led them. The older employees stuck at the same title for years. The people who did the work but never attended the meetings that mattered. At my desk, Daniel walked past without looking at me. The intern laughed loudly nearby, telling a story about a weekend trip. No one interrupted him. No one questioned him. That was when my anger stopped being loud and became precise. This wasn't about my salary. It wasn't even about his. It was about a system that worked exactly as intended, as long as no one named it out loud. I stayed late that night. Not because I was asked to, but because I needed the building quiet. Maya passed by my desk on her way out. She paused. You okay? I will be, I said. She studied my face. Just don't make yourself a target. I already am, I replied. When she left, I closed my email and opened a new folder. Not labeled, not dramatic. Just dates and names. I started with my own records. Offer letter, performance reviews, emails praising results that never turned into raises. Then I added what I was allowed to access. Salary bands by title, job descriptions, start dates. Nothing stolen, nothing hidden. Just information that had been sitting there, unused. Daniel's voice replayed in my head. Accept it or leave. I didn't want an apology. I didn't want a quiet adjustment that came with conditions. I didn't want to beg someone who had already decided my value. My phone buzzed. A message from Nina. HR asked if I'd spoken to you today. I typed back. What did you say? That you were working? That's all. A minute later, another message came in. Layla, whatever you're doing, do it clean. They'll look for a reason to discredit you. That was the moment I understood the real risk. Not losing my job, losing my credibility. The next morning, Daniel stopped by my desk. We're moving on from this, he said. Not unkindly, let it go. I am, I said. He nodded. Relieved? Good. I watched him walk away and kept working. By noon, I had timelines, patterns, comparisons that didn't rely on emotion or outrage. Just numbers and titles that told a story no one wanted written down. I wasn't preparing an argument. I was preparing a record. And once something is recorded, it becomes harder to erase. The meeting was supposed to be routine. Monthly operations review, department heads, a few analysts, one intern sitting in the back, scrolling on his phone like he always did. Daniel stood at the front. Let's keep this efficient, he said. We're short on time. When he nodded at me, I didn't stand. I didn't clear my throat. I added one slide. I said. It won't take long. Daniel hesitated. Layla, it's relevant, I said calmly. To operations, to retention, to budget planning. A few heads turned. Maya looked up from her notes. Nina folded her hands. I clicked the remote. The first slide showed titles and compensation ranges. No names. This is internal data, I said. Pulled from approved systems. Daniel shifted. You should have run this by me. I did, I said. Twice. The next slide appeared. Same titles, same department, different numbers. A low murmur moved through the room. That can't be right. Someone said, it is. I replied, all figures reflect current annual compensation. Daniel stepped forward. This is misleading without context. I looked at him. Then add context. Silence. I continued. Employees with more than 10 years of experience earn less than newer hires with no operational background. The pattern aligns with tenure, not performance. The intern laughed under his breath. This is awkward. Nina turned toward him. It's accurate. Maya spoke up. I've been here 8 years. That range is mine. Another voice followed. Mine too. Daniel raised his hands. This discussion is inappropriate for this setting. It's already in this setting, I said. I didn't bring it. It's been here the whole time. Someone at the table asked, so who approved the higher bands? No one answered. The room fractured quietly. Side conversations, phones out, notes being taken. Daniel's authority didn't disappear. It stalled. Layla, he said tightly. We'll address this privately. I'm not interested in private anymore, I replied. I shut my laptop and sat back. The numbers stayed on the screen after I stopped talking. They did not need me to defend them. The email arrived 2 days later, sent to everyone, marked company update. Daniel didn't come to my desk that morning. HR did. Claire Whitman stood beside my chair, hands folded. We're implementing changes, she said, effective immediately. Say them, I replied. She hesitated, then nodded. All roles will now operate within published compensation bands. Those bands will be visible internally. Maya looked up from across the aisle. Nina rolled her chair closer. And the discrepancies I asked. Claire met my eyes. They're being corrected. How far back? 2 fiscal years, she said, with adjustments applied evenly. Daniel finally appeared at the end of the row. He didn't speak. What about exceptions? I asked. There will be none, Claire said, including executive referrals. The intern walked past at that moment, slower than usual. No phone, no smile. He's staying, Daniel said quietly. I know, I replied. Claire added. His role has been reclassified. Compensation adjusted to match the band. The intern stopped. You're cutting my pay? Daniel didn't answer. Claire did. We're aligning it. No one laughed this time. Later that afternoon, Daniel called me into his office. We could handle this discreetly, he said. A retention bonus? A title change? Quiet. No, I said. He frowned. Think carefully. I said. I'm not interested in exceptions anymore. He leaned forward. You realize this affects people? Yes, I said. That's the point. By the end of the day, conversations sounded different, lower, careful. People checked the bands, compared notes. Names weren't said, but understanding moved fast. No apologies came. None were offered. None were needed. The system adjusted because it had to, not because it felt sorry. As I shut down my computer, Nina touched my arm. They can't pretend they didn't know anymore. I nodded. That was the only outcome I'd been working toward. The policy changes were finalized on a Friday afternoon. Claire sent the confirmation herself. No celebration, no meeting, just a clean document stating the compensation bands were permanent, audited, and no longer adjustable through private approval. I read it once, then again, then closed the file. I packed slowly, not because I was sentimental, but because I wanted to leave nothing unfinished. Maya stood near my desk, pretending to organize papers she had already stacked twice. So, this is really it. Yes, I said, they're locked in now. She nodded. You know they won't say it out loud. I know, she swallowed. But my adjustment went through this morning. Back pay too. I met her eyes. I'm glad. She reached out and squeezed my hand. You changed things. I didn't, I said. I just stopped pretending they were fine. Daniel passed by once, stopped, then kept walking. That was the closest he came to a goodbye. The intern was at his desk, typing carefully, shoulders tight. No one hovered around him anymore. No one laughed at his stories. He had a title now that matched his experience. Nothing more, nothing less. As I turned in my badge, the security guard smiled politely. Last day. Yes, good luck, he said, and meant it. Outside, my phone buzzed. A message from Nina. They can't undo it. Thank you. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. I felt lighter, like something heavy I'd been carrying without realizing had finally been set down. I didn't leave behind enemies or apologies. I left behind a record, a structure that could no longer pretend fairness was optional. Here is the lesson I carry with me now. Silence is not professionalism, and endurance is not loyalty. When a system depends on you accepting less to survive, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to play your assigned role. Not loudly, not recklessly, but clearly, with facts, and with the certainty that your value does not need permission to exist.